I'm Old Sneelock. Welcome to another episode of Old Sneelock's Workshop. I was the maintenance manager at United Technologies from 1981 to 1990. And it was a good run. I liked the job at UTC mostly. There's always things about the job that you don't like. But it was always interesting and it was never dull. When you've got 300 people working in a plant that's 104,000 square feet under roof, 3 extrusion presses, an anodized plant, a fabrication plant, a remelt department that took the scrap from the extrusion presses, along with fresh scrap coming in from Chupan up in Battle Creek, and melted it and made it into billets to be run through the extrusion press. It's a whole lot of possibilities for things to go wrong. I came walking out of the office and was headed back to my office in the plant, back by the air compressors. If you have a choice between where to put your office, between 2 places, and one of them is next to the air compressor, don't put it next to the air compressor. They were big old rotary screw compressors, and that wasn't too bad, but they were rather noisy. It's even worse if you have a piston compressor. Anyways, I digress. I was walking down the hallway. Well, actually the road where the fork trucks drove, between the back lot and the front of the plant. It was inside, but it was huge. It was like 12, 14 feet wide, because they had these big tubs that they dumped scrap into the remelt furnaces with, and they drove them back to where the scrap was, loaded it into the tub, and then drove it over and dumped it into the furnace. So the driver was headed out towards the back, and the door going out into the back lot was a roll-up door, and there was a rope that you could pull the rope and go forward and drive through the door. Well, you're not supposed to do it, but people did it. When you had this big 5-yard dump box on the front of the fork truck, and it was a big fork truck, you couldn't see the ground in front of you. So they would raise up the 5-yard dump box and drive through the plant, headed down towards the back door. Well, I'm watching the guy drive down towards that door, and I see him grab a hold of that rope and give it a yank, and then he, on the fly, heads back towards the roll-up door. Well, I see that roll-up door is not moving. When he yanked the rope, he yanked it right off the switch, so it laid in a pile. He could see the floor immediately in front of him, but he couldn't see the door, and he was coming at the door at a pretty good clip. I yelled at him, but of course it was a factory, hugely noisy. Remelt furnaces running, forklifts running, equipment banging, hydraulic presses moving back and forth. He couldn't hear me. He drove through that door, full tilt, right on out, knocked the door, wrapped it completely over the top of the forklift, and ripped it out of the frame. That was one experience. But the remelt department was always exciting. The big thing we worried about with remelt furnaces was explosions. Now, why explosions, you say? Well, aluminum is a very volatile metal. It melts at a low temperature. It also has another thing that it likes to do. It's voracious when it wants to oxidize. It will attract oxygen right out of water. It'll pull it right out of the water. So if you have a leak on the side of the furnace and it gets into the water, you can have an explosion. Also, for some strange reason, the main melting furnace had water-cooled doors. There were doors on the sides of the furnace that were big water tanks. They were door frames that were big water tanks. And if one of those sprung a leak, it leaked underneath the aluminum inside the furnace. And that would cause a big explosion. Well, the operators for the furnace were supposed to every night go in and dross off the inside, or clean off the dross off the inside of the furnace. And you had to be careful because it was made out of fire brick. And fire brick, you think brick's solid. Well, fire brick was soft. And they went in with a big paddle on the end of a 20-foot long piece of 2-inch pipe and scraped off the sides of the furnace. And you can imagine that was a horrible job. They could reach about 10 foot in. You had 10 foot of pipe outside the furnace, 10 foot of pipe inside the furnace, and they could use that to scrape around and get the dross off the bricks. But the job was just horrible, and they had to do it every night. So people in those kind of situations always try and find some way to make it work easier. Well, we get back to the thing about the water and the explosions. They would take a pop can, fill it full of water. The door was operated by an air cylinder, so it went up and down real quickly. They would open the door, chuck that can of water in, drop the door, and run. The can of water went into the furnace, and it instantly vaporized the water. The water was also immediately turned into steam, and the steam was turned into hydrogen peroxide because the aluminum would take one atom of oxygen away from the H2O, making it H1O, making it HO, and then you had the furnace burners running. So you had hydrogen peroxide gas in there, mixed with air, in the presence of an open flame. Now, hydrogen peroxide is also used as a rocket fuel because it's very, very energetic. It would cause a huge boom, and it would knock all the dross off the furnace. And if you did it enough, or did it improperly, not that there ever was a proper way, but if you did it in a manner that was not careful, just doesn't make sense any way I say it. It sounds silly. If the blast was big enough, or it hit just the right spot, or held your mouth wrong, you could blow a brick right out of the side, or the roof. It only happened once. No one would admit to doing it. It was just an accident. Somehow or another, that brick fell off the roof. But I knew what had happened. So, when you give people the option of doing something stupid, eventually somebody's going to take it. The big melting furnace eventually got scrapped out. That's a story for another day, but I was glad to see it go because those water-cooled door jambs just made me nervous. If you have any suggestions for a new video, questions about today's video, or any of the other videos on the channel, just drop a note in the comments. You know I read them all. Thanks for watching.
This video is not to be viewed by anyone under the age of 13 in the US or 16 in the European Union. without the express written permission of the parents or legal guardians of the underage person. Such written permission must be on file at the local government entity in charge of enforcing the rules and regulations established by the FTC. Anyone violating these terms is admitting by default that they hold harmless the owners and operators of this channel. Any and all questions should be addressed to your local branch of the FTC.